This is John Michael Grogan with Advancing Your World. Today I want to share with you having joy in the midst of suffering.
Hello, I'm Larry Fish, recording engineer and producer of Advancing Your World. This week, Dr. Grogan and I decided to re-release episode 5, which has had the most downloads and was listened to in 7 countries so far. But before we hear his words about how to have joy in the midst of suffering, I want to share a story of a man who learned to master this. His name was John Edwin Fish, my father. I could spend a full day telling you of stories of how our family suffered, but as John Michael Grogan has said, when you tell others of your problems, 80% don't care, and 20% are thankful you have more problems than they do. So here's a short story. I have 3 siblings, Laura, John, and Billy. John and Billy both have developmental disabilities. John has autism, and Billy suffered brain damage at birth, which left him about the level of a 3-year-old with a seizure disorder. Dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 1980, which gave him horrible headaches. In addition to multiple strokes and other complications from the tumor, he passed away in 1992. But during the battle with his brain tumor, Dad was only able to work for 3 of those 12 years. So in addition to the challenges of raising 2 children with developmental disabilities and horrible daily pain, we also lived on $880 a month for a family of 6. Yet in spite of all that, I have so many memories of how my father was able to make my sister and I laugh, still to this day. Dad really believed in the verse in Nehemiah 8:10. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Let's look at this verse as a math equation. Joy times Lord equals our strength. How are we to wield the spiritual armor to fend off the enemy without strength? Dad loved to laugh. He was talented in such a way that he could take organized chaos and make us laugh so hard that our stomach muscles hurt. Dad was physically strong. I watched him lift a car out of a ditch, snap a chain in 2, and when a 3,000-pound monument fell on him long before I was born, instead of being crushed, he only suffered a broken arm. Beyond his physical strength, he also had tremendous strength in his soul. My parents, John and Trudy, were co-founders of Agape Parents Fellowship, an organization that served families and children with developmental disabilities. Every year, Agape had a huge Christmas gala. They would buy presents for all the children and their families. Hundreds of families would come out for this event. One year, Dad had this idea to dress up like an elf. His name would be Forgetful. Now picture a 6'1", 350-pound elf with Schwarzenegger-sized arms and legs, wearing green tights, a bright red smock, his name drawn in glitter glue, and a set of giant cardboard pointed ears atop his head. Well, Dad decided he was going to pick my sister Laura up from high school, proudly dressed in his elf costume that Mom had made. Dad just didn't walk into Orchard Park High School. He skipped. He skipped down the hall, swinging his hands left and right. And when my sister saw this, I swear she did a 100-yard dash right into the girls' locker room, cheeks as red as his smock with embarrassment. Laura's friends loved every minute of it. He made so many people belly laugh that day, and I hope you, the listener, at least broke a smile, as the story still brings a joyful tear to my eyes. Dad did these kind of pranks and practical jokes quite often, ones that took careful planning and time spent preparing, all the while enduring headaches so bad that he punched a hole in the wall one day. When John Michael recorded this episode you're about to hear, and while I was editing and posting the original show, I'm reminded of this experience and how amazingly my parents had demonstrated their joy in the midst of their suffering. I also thought about how for many years I had lost sight of this life-giving concept by drowning my spirit rather than nourishing it. So sit back and listen to the words that John Michael Grogan uses to nourish your spirit and how you too can have joy in the midst of suffering.
A friend of mine once said 80% of the people you tell your problems to don't really care. and 20% are actually happy you have more problems than they have. Most of us have enough problems and troubles, it would seem, handling family issues, personal health, financial woes, and on as the world turns. When we were young, we all disobeyed our parents and paid for it. We inherently knew that it was justified. It's when we have troubles or pain that is not deserved that perplexes us most. Why me, we ask. There's a proverb that says, "It rains on the just and the unjust alike." The higher question is not why me, but why all the pain and suffering in the first place? What seems to hurt the most is when we're personally blindsided in spite of our best intentions. We bring a box of candy or flowers home to our sweetheart, and she says, "You know I don't like that kind of candy or those kinds of flowers." Our wife prepares a nice breakfast for us, and we complain that the toast is too well done. It's when we keep striving to do our best and fail to receive any appreciation or recognition that seems to sting the most. I suspect the two least read books in the Bible are Job and Revelation. Revelation because we don't understand it, and the book of Job because we don't want to think or read about pain. We all want to avoid pain, physical pain, emotional pain, any kind of pain. Millions of people strive to relieve their pain, discomfort, or discouragement by self-medicating with drugs, partying, alcohol, gambling, anything to tamp down the pain. There's a confusion between happiness and joy. We can have joy in the midst of suffering. Happiness can be mercurial or fleeting. Joy is permanent. Joy brings reassurance and comfort regardless of life's storms or our private pain. Some do what Job's wife suggested, curse God and die, some by their own hand. Someone observed that suicide is the sincerest form of self-criticism. Two facts remain, however. There is no way to avoid suffering in this world, and suffering is a mystery. But suffering can actually act as a vestibule, a space between our discomfort and the presence of God. But even if we come to God believing, He never promised us a rose garden. If you've ever noticed, sufferers attract fixers, as Eugene Peterson mentions in his fine book, The Message. This is particularly true with those having a strong sense of compassion or mercy. They seem to have wisdom and all the answers. But it has been my experience that it is better to know God than to have answers. He is, after all, the great physician. Job rages against the secularized wisdom offered by his friends. Again, Peterson writes, Job rejects the kind of advice and teaching that has God all figured out, that provides glib explanations and cliches of positive thinking. Once Job gets beyond his disbelief over his misfortune, his rage and self-pity, he enters the peacefulness of acceptance that bad things do happen to good people. Spiritual bromides and regurgitated success stories are weak tea for those in the midst of suffering. Sometimes we are required to be purified by the fires of suffering. God's word both batters us and heals us. Someone said that in the end, people would rather have truth than hollow encouragement. In the movie A Few Good Men, Lieutenant Daniel Kaffee, played by Tom Cruise, is cross-examining Colonel Nathan Jessup, played by Jack Nicholson, regarding the death of one of Jessup's Marines. In response to Lieutenant Kaffee's pressing questions, Colonel Jessup explodes. "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth, son. And therein lies the problem for many of us. Norm Cousins, late editor of Saturday Review magazine, said, "To survive, we must know. But know what? We must know truth," Cousins said. Ultimate truth. Ultimate truth lies beyond feelings. Feelings can be accommodating friends, but deceitful masters. Prayerfully and reflectively, we come to the end of ourselves, all the variations of stock answers and analyses. When we are desperate enough and quiet enough, we will, like Job, hear God's answer out of the whirlwind, the tempest. Anyone with a whit of common sense will acknowledge that God is the creator of the universe. But what many miss or refuse is that he is also the creator of the universe within us. If we have a world view outside of ourselves, outside of the big I, that everything revolves around my navel, we deepen our availability to see God in the midst of the darkness of our suffering. Non legitimus carborundum. Until next time, this is John Michael Grogan saying, be strong, be bold, and be courageous.
Sign up for exclusive access to Dr. Grogan's newsletter, and as an added bonus, you'll receive access to the growth chart that Dr. Grogan talks about in the podcast Majoring in the Majors. Visit johnmgrogan.com and sign up today. That's johnmgrogan.com. And don't forget, subscribe to Advancing Your World on your favorite podcast app.